This podcast is about the Desiree Cooper Scholarship. A full house today. We have 5 people. If you guys could just introduce yourselves. Catherine, you start off.
My name is Catherine Williams. I'm an architect in Northern Virginia, and I'm one of the, co-founders, a group of friends of Desiree who started the scholarship in 2017.
Nicholas Hill. I work at an architecture firm in the Baltimore and DC area. I will second what Catherine said. I was also on the scholarship committee for the scholarship we created for Desiree. I also, at another firm I used to work for, we partnered on a project with Little, the firm that Desiree was working with. So I was working in the office with her for about a year and a half.
I'm Jennifer Matthews. I'm an architectural designer at a firm actually based in Montgomery, Alabama, which is my hometown. So that's kind of somewhat of a new occurrence, but a full-time remote employee doing something a little different. I am a scholarship recipient. And as Nick just mentioned, my husband, Tim, actually worked with Desiree and Nick during that time when they kind of partnered with Little. So they worked together and I knew through association.
I'll go. I'm Taya Wynn. I'm a NOMA member, so I know Nick and Catherine very well. And I met Jennifer shortly before we won the scholarship, actually, online in the NOMA ARE Facebook group. We were like giving each other big ups and trading materials. So it's nice to see everyone. And I was the 2019 recipient of the Black Women in Architecture Scholarship Award.
Hello, my name is Charlita Olaleye. I'm a zoning specialist with the Department of City Planning, and I've been a part of NYCOBA NOMA for the past 4 years, serving on the executive board and as the chair of the education committee doing Project Pipeline and now ARE study group chair. I'm the 2020 DVC Scholarship Black Women in Architecture Award winner, and it's an honor. I really, really appreciate the legacy of Black women in architecture that we have, the ones that we've had the privilege to get to know, like Roberta Washington and a lot of others, and the new ones coming up, Catherine Williams. And so it's great to be a part of this legacy of women, incredible women. So, and I have a beautiful child and an awesome husband. My identity. Happy to be here.
I want to talk a little bit about who Desiree V. Cooper was. I know personally, I met Desiree at a NOMA event. I can't remember if she just got to DC or was in DC for a couple of months before she attended a NOMA event. I remember it vaguely. We were at a showroom. I think it was like a carpet showroom or something that DC NOMA had connections with. And it was her and it was Nakia Strong. And I met both of them at the same time. And we just clicked. And we clicked because, so back in the day, I was going through a brutal breakup. And so was she. And so we kind of bonded with that, just starting dating and just getting over that heartbreak. We did a study group for LEAD. And we met up at Wagman's over in PG, Landover. It was me, her, and Donna Lewis. I don't know if you guys know her. She's a wonderful interiors person. So it was 3 of us and we hung out, met like once a week or something. Her and Nakia share birthdays. Birthdays were close together. And I was rummaging through my old email and I was like looking at some correspondence, and the last correspondence we had was a birthday party. We went to hookah. I don't remember that, Nick?
Yeah, the Chicha Lounge.
Yeah.
I was thinking of her. I got a picture of her. She's coughing on the hookah. Yeah.
So that was. How did you meet Desiree, Catherine?
Probably similar through NOMA and through, so I wasn't close friends with Desiree. I sort of knew her more as mutual friends of you and Nakia, but we would be at NOMA events together. And I think one of the last times I remember us together was we were at, I want to say like the Nationals, like one of their like tailgating things or something. It was something outdoor. And I remember like a couple of us were there and she came for a while and like hung out. And I think then she was with a friend of hers. So, it was like she was with her friend. So she came and hung out with us for a while and then she left with her friend. But so I sort of knew her by association and talked to her a little bit through that, and learned a little bit about what she was doing in her house that she was working on in DC. But yeah, it was kind of like a few like spots like here and there where we cross paths, but I say more so through you guys than through direct, sort of conversation and connection with her.
Yeah, Desiree was cool. I mean, I think part of what you all are getting at is, being from Chicago and being involved in INOMA for years, that kind of the social glue that holds that organization together, and it's intergenerational. It's really significant. It is truly significant. So you meet people or you're around people, you don't really remember how you met them, right? You always been here, right? Like, you see the one time. I think I met Desiree at the NOMA conference in Detroit. I remember we were just maybe it was me and Brian Hudson, we were just coming back into the hotel and went in the lobby, see who was there, and they had that kind of mezzanine. And Brian Lee was over there and he was talking to Desiree. They were just talking about work stuff, whatever. And we just sat down and said, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, that kind of thing. So once I moved out here and started running around and getting people together, whether we go to stands or whatever, and Nakia moved up here, then it's like, okay, now, we're really getting the crew together, right? So it was just like that. It's just social glue. And then, having a chance to work with her with Little, that was cool. It was like, hey, my friend works here, so it was really cool. I think that's, the thing that probably hurts the most, but makes it most significant is that she was like any one of you all. And that's what makes it hurt so bad. But also, I do this for, Catherine would have put this together for any of us, and we will put the time in and put the work in. So we don't always have to act like someone is the queen of the world and they deserve something done. No, that's your girl and you're going to stand up for her. She's not here to stand up for herself. And that's what it's about for me. So, we all wish Desiree was still here, but I think it's wonderful that we're continuing to do what we're doing.
And I was kind of just say one more thing. I think Nick, I echo that, like, she is us and we are her kind of thing, because I feel like, yeah, it could have been any of us. And I think also because she was such a good-hearted person, and like so many during the whole memorial and all that kind of stuff, there were so many people who had so many good things to say about her, and just like how she made them feel, and sort of the light that she brought when she was in a room and when she talked to people. I think that's kind of why it made it important for me to sort of like make sure that her memory was carried on, because I feel like, yeah, I did feel so much that it's a part of me, especially because we're such a small community in Black women in architecture. That whole thing of it could have been one of us, or it could have, that connection was there, even though I wasn't, like you said, with you guys all the time, hanging out and stuff like that, that connection was still there.
It was just surreal. I mean, when I came home from work and, I was working, down in DC. So coming back to Baltimore is, it's a hike coming back up 95. So I got here and Lauren was, she was in the kitchen and she had tears in her eyes. I was like, what's wrong? And she said, told me what happened, Desiree. I was like, my Desiree? Like, not one of your friends I ain't met before? Like, not that for real?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not like Lauren was best friends with Desiree, but she was one of us.
Yeah.
One of us.
That was crew. So,
Yep.
it was significant. It really was. And, it's definitely disappointing, but that's a girl and we're going to keep her raised up. So it's that.
I mean, I remember, it's funny you mentioned that NOMA trip that was in Detroit, and I had this bright idea of like, I'm going to let all my girls go, right? So it was me, Desiree, Nakia, Devin, Carol. It was like 5 or 6 of us. And I think Morena was there. It was one other person. I can't remember who the other person was. But anyway, I have this rule where you don't travel no more than 4 women at a time, because we're
Especially in
women.
Rome.
That's right. But I was the coordinator. And so it was kind of like, at that point, I was like, y'all do it. Y'all grown. Do whatever y'all need to do. But it was great. We all like shared a room, and then we all separated, and then we got back together. And it was a great bonding experience up in Detroit. Like it was really It was so much fun. I remember I was at a women in architecture meeting. I was doing the 2017 Women's Leadership Summit, and it was like a group of us. And it was that night, it was a nighttime, and it was like 7 o'clock or something. And Nikia called me. So Nikia and I have this relationship where we don't talk. We text. We are text buddies. Okay, like we don't, because we hate talking on the phone. Like we just don't. And so Desiree and Nikia were roommates for like a year, I think. I think we may have done 2 years. I feel like it was a year. And then Nikia went home to Atlanta and Desiree bought a house. So I was there at night and she called me and I was like, what in the world is going on? So I left the room. I was like, hey girl, what's up? And then that's what she told me what happened. And I ran out of there. People were like, what's wrong? And I just ran out of there. And I was just shocked. Like I just saw her, you know.
I was talking to Brian Hudson. I was about to give Desiree a call a couple of days before that, because I had some project that came across my plate, and I can't recall what it was, but I wanted to talk to her about maybe working on it with her. And I think Brian gave me a call, and I was talking to him about it. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll wait a little bit, something like that. But I was like just about to give her a call. So then when I found out what happened, I was like, man, that would have been like the same day. It was like the same day that I would have called her. And so it was surreal. It was absolutely surreal. I think the one thing that affected me after that, I have good relationships with female friends I've known for years now, you know, as you all are getting older. I'm not getting older, but you know, with some of them, I hit them up and I told them what happened. And I was like, I tend to give you a little bit of space in your own relationships and everything. That's not going on anymore. It's not going on anymore. So if you involved with anyone, I'm not saying I gotta know what his social security number is, whatever, but I may be a little bit more pushy on who you're dealing with. Because it was just kind of surreal. None of us knew who this guy was, right? And it could have been any of us, you know, it could have been anyone, and you don't know who's capable of what. Yeah, we get it. But you got to you have to stay close to your people. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So that's how it affected me.
Again, we met because we had long-term relationships ended, and we started dating people. And we were like, okay, here's my number. Here's my mom's number. Here's your number, your mom's number. If anything is to go down, we have each other. And we would talk about who we're dating, you know, like, oh, Lord, he's crazy. You need to stay away from him. We were careful. And so, you know, it could have been me. It could have easily been me. And she knew this person. It wasn't like a online thing. It was me, you know, face to face.
In person, yeah.
Yeah. It was like if you would meet someone in a bar or at a club or at work or like whatever. It was just you just start talking and you see what's up. So that was the shocking thing about it. And it was a point where you get comfortable and you just like, I didn't know who she was talking to. It was just like she didn't know who I was talking to at the time. Some people, you know, you didn't define a relationship. Like you casually dating. Could I have been more in her life? And I go through this in my head sometimes.
And what do you do? And what's the answer? That's the thing. Like it's so frustrating. But what could we have done?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
What did anyone do?
The hard part.
With gun violence, I mean, there are families across the world that ask themselves that same question every day. What could we have done? And the answer is probably nothing. You know, things are going to happen however they do. And, you know, you hope you keep, I don't even know what to say about it. You know, anything can happen anytime. It just is what it is.
And just to let the audience know, because we were being kind of vague right now. So she was at home with a guy that she was talking to. I don't know if she was official or not or whatever, but in terms of the relationship, but he ended up killing her at her home and then committed suicide. So, oh gosh, yeah. And the days that followed, she was so close to her mom. Like, they just went to Greece. I remember that because I was like, oh, you went to Greece with your mother? I remember that so clearly. And just, yeah, I'm not going to dwell on it.
I'll say, Melissa, I think that was for me. I think that's why that also made it important. I think as women in relationships and just raising the issue of domestic violence and that as the cause for why she's not here, right? I think that that's something that we don't necessarily always talk about. We don't necessarily talk about in our circles. I think we still haven't really necessarily had that conversation in sort of like our architecture circle. Maybe on a wider sphere, people have had that conversation. But I think that was also one of the issues why I felt like we needed to keep her name and to keep her memory alive, because as much as we want her to be here, it's also a lesson, I think, for all of us, and how we move forward in the world, how we move forward in our relationships, as much as we can sort of be mindful and cognizant and careful and learn from it whatever we can. And not that it was her fault, she didn't do anything wrong, obviously, but I think for us it was all sort of like a wake up call. And just like you're talking about, like the casualness of things and how we might move about in the world, and sort of really thinking about, what do we need to do better, I guess, and how do we, like, just like Nick was saying, like how do we keep our friends close, and also like have those conversations of like who's in our life, and when we meet new people, and what are the good, what are the bad, and what are the red flags and those kind of things, and how can we move forward in a better way from this situation. Yeah.
I think there was a shift though. I mean, like, as a person that's slightly younger, like I had met Desiree in passing at a few NOMA conferences. I can't even pinpoint. I know it was the hallway and I can't even pinpoint which one. And then my next like vivid memory was like her popping up in like one of the Brozart's ball after party type. Everyone was in the street. I remember her with Nakia because like I remember, you co-locate people in your brain when you're like, oh, like I know they were friends, they were together. So like that's about it. But I had moved to Philly in 2011 and I had kind of re-engaged NOMA. I had not really been super active in NOMA since 2008 when I was like leaving school. I know I definitely met her in 2008 when I was leaving school because the conference was in DC that year. And I remember her being such like an active part of that DC NOMA crew. And I remember when it happened, like one, because we had like started interacting on Facebook, right? This is when like Facebook was cool. Like it was shocking because it was like this person I had met in real life that knew real people I kind of talked to, and then something really tragic happened. So tragic it was on the news here in Philly, right? Because I'm in
Wow.
Pennsylvania. Being crazy because you're connecting this thing, like this person I met that knows people that I know, and it's on the news. Like random people are saying in passing, because every news story mentioned her being an architect. Like random people that didn't know her are saying to me, like, "Oh, are you like, did you see that story? Like, how your grandma comes up to you and being like, no, I knew her, right? It was surreal and weird, and also everyone in NOMA reached out, right? Because all the older folks didn't know who was cool with who and who knew who. And I got like a flood of emails of people like Andrew Thompson reaching out, are you okay? Brian Hudson reaching out, are you okay? And I was like, check on the other folks that like actually talk to her more frequently. Like, I mean, I'm shocked, but like, there are people that were like for real friends with her that I remembered. I think, Nick, you said it kind of really plainly, like it could have been any of us. And it was that realization that like, it could have been anyone. You're right. It could have. And I felt the shift. I saw a shift. I feel like the next conference, the next NOMA conference, I feel like everyone was a little closer, right? Everyone was like, all the older people were a little nosier. Nick was definitely a little nosier, right? Like I remember walking into LA the next year and getting a sit down from a bunch of grown men that I know professionally. Like, we gotta talk about what you've been going on in your love life. And me being like, do we need to discuss this? Right? And I mean, so I think like it definitely was this defining moment in NOMA because like, there's these two moments at the conference, right? There's that very strong professional network. And then there's that piece that's really more like your extended family reunion where like everyone comes over after the meal at on a holiday. And like, people are in your business. They're trying to figure out like when you finishing that test and I'm gonna text, they really are gonna text you, right? So I think there was more of that than I had felt in previous years. And I couldn't tell, was it like I had finally like grown up, right? I had been in NOMA and back involved enough years, and now like I was officially at the adult table, or was it this shift that I noticed? But I did always notice like there was something about that year that felt different from that point on. I mean, I don't know, like maybe the other folks felt differently. Like I know maybe you guys didn't know her as well, but like I always
Yeah,
feel that was like a defining moment for the organization
yeah.
and the connections within.
Yeah, I think as a person on the outside of everything, unfortunately, I didn't know Desiree personally. Kind of like I said, Tim worked with Desiree and Nick at Little for
That's
about a year, huh?
I texted Tim about it when it happened. He was just shocked.
Yeah, yeah, and there was a couple times before that day even came where it's like something in passing is kind of said to you, and you don't really think about it until you think about it. And there were multiple times where Tim was like, there's an architect at Little. Her name is Desiree. She has these personality and traits that like kind of remind me of you a little bit. And I think you guys would like you would really hit it off. I feel like she would be like this really good mentor for you. It's just her spirit. And I think like some kind of way you got to come to Little one day so you can meet her. He said that to me at least 2 or 3 times, and I never made it to Little. I never got a chance to meet her. And I just remember the day that happened. Like I text him after work and he's like, I'm headed to Little. Something happened to Desiree. And he was just headed there to try to just, see the people that he worked with before. At that point, he was working at the AIA. But I just remember that day, and, it kind of puts a lot into perspective. Like, you always think you have this chance, and at some point in life, you're going to meet somebody that somebody said something about, and it put it into perspective for me that, you might not always have that chance. And unfortunately, I missed that chance. And it just, never came up in my mind as like an urgency. And it is sad. It's really sad. And, 2020 now, I feel like, when this year started, same situation. You always want to catch up with people that cross your mind, and then it's like, well, I'm busy right now. I'll catch up with them later. 2020 hits, and it's like every month it's something or somebody. And earlier this year, I'm just like, I'm going to do a better job of, trying to reach out to somebody if they cross my mind. That happened for like maybe the first 4 months of the year, and then you slip back into the same thing until it happens again. And I think it really makes you think about, take the time to stop and really try to, do the things that are in front of you. Reach out to the people that are crossing your mind, and just check in with people and check on people just to see what they're going through, what's happening, and if they need somebody. So I really hate that happened. And like you all said, like she is a part of us in so many different ways, so it's unfortunate.
So, Catherine, how did you come up with the idea of doing a scholarship, and more importantly, it being for getting your license?
A couple of reasons. So one, when Desiree passed, I think there were a group of us who, we were all like, what are we going to do? Like, we have to do something to keep her name alive, to keep her spirit alive, to honor this memory. So that first year we did this, we ran a marathon in Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I laugh because I didn't run it. They did it. We did it. It was a relay marathon. So it ended up, I think it started out being like 10 of us. We were all like, oh yeah, we're going to like do something. We're going to do something. So it ended up being 4 people who ran the marathon as a relay. So 4 legs, Pittsburgh, or Harrisburg, sorry, not Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, where she's from. The YMCA there does a series of marathons throughout the year. So there was one that we could sign up for as a relay. So four people ended up running that. And we sort of did that as, sort of in her memory. And we had these t-shirts, and, I think the 4 people who ran and their families, and Desiree's mom and her dad and her brother were there. And so it was a really cool sort of like bonding event. And it was freezing cold in Harrisburg that day, but it was a really fun event, and fun just to like be there. She was a runner. That was the other thing. She was a runner.
Yeah.
So, it was a cool thing to honor her in that way. And I think I guess that was in 2016. So then in 2017, when I've been doing the Black Women in Architecture brunch, I was able to get sponsors. So that was like the second year for this brunch, which I had been doing in DC, really to connect women in DC, because as Black women here, a lot of times we're the only person at our job site, at our firm, whatever we're doing, even though DC is a pocket of Black architects, a lot of times we still don't see each other. And so this was an event to really get us all together in one room so that we could see each other's faces, learn each other's names, figure out like how we could work together, partner together, study for exams together, whatever it was, so that we could be a support network. And so 2017, that year, I had been doing the brunch sort of like as of my own on this like shoestring, like get a couple $1,000s from wherever I could find from some firm or whatever like that, just to be able to put it together. And that year I had extra money and I was like, what am I going to do with this money? Like, and, and for me, I have done a non-traditional path through architecture. So I wasn't always at a firm where someone was paying for my exams. A lot of time it was coming out of my own pocket to pay for my exams. And I knew that I wasn't the only one in that situation. And there weren't a lot of, at the time, there weren't a lot of ways for people who didn't have money to pay for exams to get money. I think the AIA had maybe started there, the pedigree scholarship, but that was really sort of the only scholarship for the ARE at the time. And I felt like if we're going to increase our numbers of Black women in architecture, like this one barrier was something that I could do something about. So I used the proceeds from the brunch to seed the scholarship. And since being an architect was important to Desiree and sort of one of the things that sort of defined her life here, especially in DC, it was something that we could have her name carry on as sort of the namesake of the scholarship. And I guess like the friends of hers, a group of us, we sort of talked about it and figured out, like looked at applications and, again, like this shoestring thing of like putting it all together. And then we had to figure out like how we were going to like have the money. So, I reached out to NOMA and their foundation. And so they hold the money for the scholarship because none of us wanted to start a 501c whatever needed to happen to make it a fun. We were like, a foundation already exists. We can give them the money. They hold the money. We do all the stuff behind the scenes as far as like the application. And we put together a jury of people who review the applications, including her family. Like to me, that was important, was that her family was involved because her name is attached to this. I felt like if they wanted to be involved, that we needed to have them. So, each year her mom reads the applications and helps decide who gets the scholarship. And I just got a text from her a couple of days ago on Christmas and I was like, hey, the scholarship application's coming up, so I'm going to be calling you in a couple of weeks to start reviewing applications. And so I try to maintain that relationship. And for me, I think I lost my mom in 2012 and she lost her daughter, so I kind of like, even though I don't see her as a surrogate mother, I kind of like know on the other end what she's going through. And so I kind of like keep it as an important tie to like, reach out to her a couple times a year and just say, hey, what's going on? Because we did the marathon, she knows my daughter. So she like asks about how my daughter is doing. And so we sort of like kept this relationship going since that time and sort of carried on through that way.
Jennifer, were you the first recipient of the scholarship?
I don't think so. Mine was 2019. That wasn't the first year, was it?
2018 was the first year.
Okay.
So you were
The year after.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer and I were the same year.
Yeah, we were the same year.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you got an email.
I screamed.
All right, Jennifer, let's start with you. So so after the screaming, so it's kind of like you received it, and then how was life? Like
So
your life.
when the application came up, I was actually finishing up the last 2 quarters of grad school. So I knew the end was nearing, and I had taken like a break just to get through that last little bit. And I was nearing like that last class. I put the application out there, and I think underlyingly, like I was at a firm that wasn't reimbursing for tests, and I knew that, after grad school, I just needed like that extra motivation and just like, and, seeing Desiree's name and like remembering Tim and, all the things that he'd said in the past. I told him about the scholarship and he's like, you should definitely go for it. And I said, well, okay, I will. But getting it, I think I was I think underlyingly, I was more excited to kind of just kind of walk in her footsteps for a bit because it was really sad that I didn't get a chance to meet her. So I think I was just excited. I was excited. I was motivated. Since then, I have 3 tests left. I've taken 1 test back in October. Since I finished grad school, it didn't go in my favor. Got to re-up and study some more for that thing. But I think to me it was just kind of the motivation that I needed after finishing the degree to just kind of keep going and keep pushing. So that is what I'm doing now.
All right, Ty.
So I had been, so similar to Catherine, I've had a non-traditional path through architecture, and it was really hard because I would come to the conference every year and everyone asked, even outside of the conference, right? The first question anybody who's in traditional practice asks you is like, so when are you getting your license? And I think one of the hardest questions has always been for me to answer is like that question, because I was like, I'm doing all this stuff, right? I'm doing all this stuff. Like I'm proud of me, and I'm still getting stuck up on this like one question. And I was like, do you not understand what I do? Like,
You just cured cancer, AIDS, and like solved poverty. And
Still but still your license.
You get your license.
I don't care. Like I don't understand. So I lucked out in 2014. I got a job in Philly right before the Philadelphia conference, where I was working at the housing authority. And it was a NOMA member. It was like how I got the job was a really crazy story for another podcast another day. But like it was a NOMA member that I like had met at a meeting that hadn't been coming. I kind of like, he was like, oh yeah, I need someone like you in my office. And then I get the job and he can sign for AXP hours, right? So all of a sudden I'm back on a path that I had been off of for 5 years. Like there was no way of me getting real IDP hours. Like I finished all the like BS, you can just volunteer and like pretend you're drawing and get someone to sign for it hours. Like I had not had any real hours. So like all of a sudden I'm now able to get real hours. And I was like, all right, well, I got to get as many of them as I can while I'm here. And so it became like a dogged pursuit of these hours. I was doing these hours because I was like, I'm not even going to start thinking about testing if I can't even finish the hours, because I'm like, I know at this point I'm not going back in traditional practice. I don't even want to delude myself. So I had like finally made it a point where I could like start testing, and like getting into it, it was so difficult. I worked at a place, the housing authority didn't pay for tests, right? Like my boss himself, I'm sure if I had finished all the tests, he would have like given me a $200 check, right? And anything that he had in the office, he would throw your way. So like you could take graphic standards home, but like we didn't do that type of work. We didn't have anything in the office. So I was like online. Catherine was a really great resource actually, but like trying to get as many like free resources as I could. How do you cobble them together? Go bust open your old architecture books and find all your structures books you haven't touched in 10 years. It was wild, kitchen discard books when other people were like, oh, but like it was also the switch to 4.0. So like a lot of people had finished in 3.0. Like most people I knew in NOMA had been done, right? Even folks that weren't that much older than me. And so I was like, this is not helpful. I had to actually invest in some stuff. And so my mom had died in 2012. I was getting her pension. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to take a piece of this money every year and I'm going to like start investing in the stuff that I need. So I started getting the books. Them suckers are expensive, right? The books were expensive. And it was hard because like I finally like I had joined a NOMA study group, but it was like more of like emotional support than it was actual practical help. And I made it. I was studying like crazy. I didn't really tell anybody, right? Because there weren't a lot of people here in Philly that were studying. A lot of people in Philly that are like within like 7 to 15 years older than me never finished. That's the Philly story. We have so few people that finish. And so I was like, well, like, there's no one in my immediate vicinity who can help. I just gotta I'm good at test taking. I know this about myself. I just gotta do it. And so I was studying, and I feel like I had just hit a wall. Like I had made the transition to 5.0 by the skin of my teeth. I actually took a test 2 days before the cutoff. And I didn't even know, I thought I had failed it walking out the door, and I didn't find out till 2 weeks after that I actually hadn't. And that meant I was grandfathered. I only had 2 tests left. And I was like, what? I was like, oh my gosh. And I feel like I had just run out of steam. Like I had done so much in a year. And I was like, this was really hard, like, especially as busy as I was at the time. I was chapter president, I had joined the national board, and I was like, carving time out for studying was like hellish for me. And I'm just hearing people act like I'm supposed to be finished 2 weeks ago. Like, oh, when are you gonna be done, right? When are you gonna be done? And I'm like, do you not know what I'm doing to get through this? Like, this isn't helpful. And I feel like the only two people on earth who were even at all remotely helpful, for real, it was like Catherine and Brian Hudson, two people that aren't anywhere remotely close to me, right? I'm talking to them on Facebook and through text messages. And so that year when the scholarship came up, I wasn't going to do it because I was like, I know Catherine, it's going to look like nepotism. Like, I can't apply for this. Like, all that I've been doing in Noma, I think I was like, I can't, like, it's ridiculous. Like, for me to even think that I should apply for this is insane. And then I think it was getting close to the deadline, and Catherine and Nakia were hitting me up every day. They were like, there's not enough people who submitted from PA. Like, you know, can you send it out? Can you send it out? So I'm like sending it out to all these other people, like trying to convince like people I barely know, like, you should really apply for the scholarship. You don't know what it is. And then in the end, like, one of my VP was like, you have 2 tests left and you don't have any money. Apply for the scholarship. That's the last 2 tests, right? Like, you know, just buy the credits. And then like, that's one thing, like, you don't have to worry about it. It's like one more anxiety you can cross off your list. And I was like, you know what, you're right. Let me do it. And so I was really ecstatic when I got it because, like, one, I was like, great, like, I bought the credits. So like I was able to secure my seat for 5.0 for like the last 2 tests. And then 2020 happened and it's been like crazy. And I used the credit halfway through the year, like realizing Prometric wasn't opening and everything was shifting. So I actually was able to schedule out a test in 2021 that I was like, you know, it's super far out. And I was like, this is crazy, but it was the first test that was available on a Saturday. And I was like, well, let me just lock it in, right? And I wouldn't have been able to because like I definitely didn't have the money at the time. So like I was like, this is why it was a really big relief to not have to worry about that. It also gave me comfort because I was like, you know, they're so expensive. And I was sitting there and I was like, the 2 that I struggled with, the 3 I'd already passed, I had taken 2 twice. And there's nothing that hurts more than like getting that test, failing it, and having to put out another $250, and then like figure out like what study material did I have to get. Like, you start this money cycle all over again. Like, you know, you go through all your grief stages of like your own failure. Like, I just wasted all this money. Like, that's where you latch on as like a person. You're like, I wasted all this money. And so I felt like it was nice because I was like, even if I don't pass both of them, like I'm not spending any more money than I would have already had to spend, right? So like I've got this security blanket of if I have to take it again, I know I'm covered and I don't even have to worry about it. I can just do it. And I've not had to take anyone 3 times. So like, I feel like that was my solace of like, I can do this. And I think it was helpful because the money that I would have had to spend on one test, right? I was able to put in the other study materials that I needed to get through 5.0. And now we got Black spectacles.
Yes, indeed.
So I will say that I've never been on the jury. I kind of like took myself out of that process because I knew a lot of the women. And so I try to get people who are other people on the jury because of that. So yeah. So you don't have to worry about like I'm in the room like deciding.
I was like, man, everybody knows Catherine.
But I am. So
For me, I mean, I was shocked. Like, I was very excited. I think to start off, I didn't actually know Desiree personally, but I think I'm kind of overwhelmed hearing her story from you all. I didn't know all the details. And what stood out to me about the scholarship is that she was a light. It seemed like she impacted so many people and she used her life for good, which is what I hope we all desire. So that was a personal encouragement. And so when I did see, oh yes, and it's a reminder to just take every moment, like basically what Jennifer was saying, take advantage of every moment. Like I've been putting some things off and it's like, no, you actually just have to go for it. Like, don't hold back. I had passed my first exam in 2019 and I was gearing up to start studying again at the beginning of 2020. And I had, my little one was 10 months old. So it was a big personal shift that I was going through. So to get the scholarship and have the money and just have it was just a way to get my engine going. for the exams. Like, it was a big encouragement. So it's really grateful for it.
So either Nick or Catherine, can you guys get into the details of the scholarship, like the requirements and when it's due and all that good stuff?
Catherine, you want to get into that? I actually had some questions for Jennifer and Ty and Charlotte. I was going to put on my juror glasses real quick, but do you want to go over the details? And then I just wanted to see how how their activities have changed or not changed, but how they've grown their activity on this side of the scholarship. So, but do you want to? We did post the scholarship is live now for 2021. We added a component for a NOMA member. Catherine, you
Yeah.
want?
So a couple things. Yeah. So the scholarship is live. It's due on January 11th. We usually have it due. We usually release it in December, have it due in January with the goal of doing the announcement in February, because that was Desiree's birthday was in February. So we try to release it around in February, the winners. And we had 3 awards previously: the Black Women in Architecture Award, which really any Black woman can apply for. We have the Harrisburg Award, which basically is anyone minority resident of Pennsylvania, since that is where she was from. And then we have the DC Memorial Award, which again, any minority resident of the DC, Maryland, or Virginia area, since she was working in DC during the last years of her life. And then this year we added the NOMA Award. And really that came about because, again, doing the brunch this year, because it was virtual and because we've gotten a lot of traction around the award, one, because of Desiree's name, and I think because of 2020 and people looking to help Black architects and other architects of color, we had additional funds. So we also felt like, I think we wanted to add something that could sort of stretch our requirements, our eligibility a little bit more. So the NOMA award basically is any NOMA member can apply for, regardless of where they live. And so that's our 4th award this year. We also increased the amount this year. So the Black Women in Architecture, because that is sort of our premier award, and because we had funds this year to really sort of add to the pot of what we've been doing, since we've sort of been raising funds now since 2017, we sort of built up a nice little nest egg. So this year, the Black Women in Architecture Award will actually fund the entire 6 exams for the winner. And we also increased the DC Award and the Harrisburg Award. So again, it's really just our way of sort of, again, like I said, trying to eliminate that barrier of cost, because we know for a lot of architects just starting out and, sort of not at the not licensed level, like getting money to take exams can be a difficult thing. And then also just because of 2020, like we know, so many firms had furloughs or had layoffs this year. And I'm sure there are people who thought that they were going to be in a firm that was going to pay for their exam, and maybe they don't have that situation anymore. So hopefully this can provide that assistance. And basically the award to be eligible is to, must be African American, Hispanic, Asian, or Native American ancestry, legal or permanent resident of the United States. We ask that people have passed at least one section of the ARE, and we do that because we want people that are already actively in the process and have started and are moving along that path, and not someone who's like maybe thinking about it, but isn't sure that this is what they want to do. You can't have had any discipline from NCARB, and we can't have been awarded any other full ARE. So like the Pettigrew Scholarship, I think awards the full cost of the exams. I'm not sure there's any others, but we ask that people don't apply if they've already gotten that scholarship. And then in the past, the firm not paying has been a requirement. This year, we're asking that people submit documentation on whether their firm does or does not pay. And that will be taken into consideration, but we're not making it a straight out requirement this year, because we are trying to stretch sort of our eligibility a little bit more. And we know that even if a firm pays for the exams, that study materials is still a cost that people bear the burden of, that is not always taken up by a firm. So even though we don't explicitly say like you can use this for study materials, like once people get the funds, we know that that may be something that they use it for. So that's kind of our 2021 award. So yeah, it's on the Black Women Architecture website, which is bwa-network.com. And you can just go under the initiatives, and it's under the Desiree Cooper Scholarship. So
I just also included in the show notes of this podcast. So
okay, great.
Perfect.
Did I miss anything, Nick?
I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, I don't want to nitpick and say,
So Nick and Nakia Strong from Atlanta, and who else?
Rich
Oh
Leal.
yeah, Richard Liu joined our committee this year. He's going to be the chair of the jury. He's an architect in DC. He's going to be the chair of the jury, and we've sort of been the small committee that have been organizing over the last couple of months to get the application out. So that's our team for this year.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so just looking at the three of you that have won, and as I said, this is, it's a scholarship for emerging professionals, and, however long we emerge, hey, it's a nebulous amount of time, right? But, kind of looking into, how you apply and what you plan application, and, where you were at that point in time and kind of where you are now. I just wanted to speak on that a little bit. I was looking back, thinking back or looking back. So I was definitely involved in 2018 and 2019 more heavily than I was for 2020 award. So I do remember looking over, Jennifer, looking over your application, Ty looking over your application and seeing what you've done and how you put things together. It was really cool, really cool. But I went back and took a couple of notes for the podcast. But I remember Jennifer, it just seemed like, whatever you were involved in, you weren't just doing it to check a box, but you accomplished something significant and lasting. So the one thing, the Mind the Gap event, right? I mean, obviously we did, first African American VP of IS is great as a role, but as far as a lasting, initiative, with the Mind the Gap event to be recognized by a magazine, get an award, for introducing college students to healthcare architecture. I mean, it's not just, oh yeah, we're going to have something for the kids and on a little Saturday and call it a day. Like, it's something that, no, we're going to put this in the organization. We're going to hopefully, get them matriculating through school, and it's really something. So doing things like that, just look like your whole application, like you were just ready, but how did you balance out that confidence with the vulnerability that architecture places on our shoulders? It weighs us down with sometimes. How'd you balance those out?
I went to a HBCU. Well, at Tuskegee, I think Tuskegee prepared me. Tuskegee taught me, hashtag. You run, like, the students there are always a part of something. They're always leading something. They're always creating something. Everybody has kind of their own little niche and place and whatever they're interested in. I feel like the HBCU culture always like cultivates whatever it is the hustle, everything you're interested in, anything you could ever want to start, any business you're trying to, run on the yard, anything. But the one thing that happened to me at Tuskegee was I shifted away from the university softball team, and I like went full blown into like student organization life and help create these first time events that really help the student body. We didn't have architecture specific career fairs. So the one thing that empowered me to just
Uh-oh.
Man,
that answer was just so powerful.
It just blew her.
Knocked out the feed. Hey, Melissa, get your editing ready.
We'll
take some editing together.
Seeing my colleagues at
There we go.
Wait, Jennifer, you're gonna have to back up.
Yeah.
Can you? Sorry, I'm back. What was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about the career fairs.
Yeah. So, with the AIS NOMA chapter there, I was the AIS president. We started this first time kind of career fair. And I think the thing that motivated me the most out of just jumpstarting events was to see the opportunities that my colleagues around me had to sit down with firms for the first time, to actually talk to architects outside of our college for the first time. And I carried that with me to the AIS national level. Just reaching out to the students, getting them motivated to do more, talking to the HBCU students, visiting the schools when I could. That wasn't something that the national officers had done before I got there. I think I spoke at the NOMA conference that year and just tried to get us out there and just showing the leaders around me that that presence is necessary. And I don't know, I think that just ability to give others opportunities around me to expose them to things that they might not have known about before has always motivated me. So it's always kept me. I did a NOMA symposium with the DC NOMA chapter that, kind of got a lot of the DMV students together and just like in one room and just, hearing from architects, hearing from different people and, doing all these events and things. And then, the Array Architects thing came up. So, if there's a space, there's an opportunity, there's a way to create an event. I'm usually like the little, wild child behind those things when those things sporadically pop up. So I think since the Array Mind the Gap, I kind of created this platform called Creatives XP that introduces students to traditional and non-traditional career paths. Like it really, to me, gave the students in the DMV and even wherever just that opportunity to know more about their career options. Because me graduating from Tuskegee, the reality is your whole student body isn't gonna find a job in architecture in a firm. And then a lot of those students are then lost as to what to do. They end up working in careers that have nothing to do with design related things. So I think that's one thing that's always motivated me, but I didn't know how to really facilitate it. So Creatives XP has been that thing. Unfortunately, like COVID hit as soon as it kind of popped off for the first event last year. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of over the digital Zoom world in a sense. So it's been me kind of underlyingly scheming to see, what's the best way to kind of reach out to these students as they're at home or whatever coming up on this spring when my second event of, what would have been my Creatives Explore event would have been. So I'm always the wild child behind some event that's happening out there in the world somewhere. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. Mind the Gap still happens. This year it was unfortunately canceled because of COVID, but it's still going on. But that's what motivates me is just giving the students and emerging professionals like those opportunities to get some kind of experience or interaction, whereas they may not in their firm or at their school or, whatever, what have you. So that was a lot, but that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
I think I got it, but do you mind rephrasing or repeating the question? My little one and her cousin walked in right at the moment that you were explaining. So.
Yeah, no problem. So I just want the purpose of the application for the scholarship is basically it's for emerging professionals, is to help you all out, specifically with, with completing the licensure exam, obviously. But from the place in your life that you're obviously an emerging professional, and however I kind of said in jest, however long you emerge, it can take some time, right? But you're definitely in a certain place in your life and your career when you applied for the scholarship. And I just want to see what that energy was and how you continue that energy on this side of the scholarship, So that's really the main purpose. And Charlita, since you spoke up, I'll go to you. But being in New York, wonderful examples of Black women in architecture. I mean, your Roberta Washington, your Heather Phillip O'Neill, your Pascal Sublime, those are, big ticket architects right there. And then so many of our other, I always say friends of the room, the Erica Cochrans and everyone, Iron Mia Jones, there's wonderful people up there.
Yeah.
How did that really, being involved with them, I mean, a lot of your involvement in Nicole Noma was what you put on your application, but just being able to rub elbows, rub shoulders, catch an ear hustle around women like that, like how did that really influence you? And how have you been able to continue the work that you intended to continue the programming and creating the talent and content for Nicole Noma? How have you continued to do that on this side?
Right. So, well, first of all, it was an incredible experience to be around these women and just all the incredible architects in New York, like Ibrahim, all of them. They were like big brothers and big sisters. We're creating programming, we're expanding Project Pipeline, and I just had incredible support. Like right when I came in, Pascal was I just told her this. I just called her a little while ago because right when I came in, she was the president of Nikoba Noma, and she had her little one in the meetings, and we would be sitting at the board table and he would be running around, but she would still, get through the meeting, and it was official, and it was as family reunion as Noma is, we were having fun, but we were getting things done. And it was very impactful to see that type of leadership, that it's possible, that it exists. And just to be in the room with women creating spaces that didn't exist before was also exciting, because I went to Hampton University and we did a lot of program building, which was very fun. And so to bring that into your professional life, going from being a student to the professional organization, it was encouraging to see like there's no boundaries. Like we already had a structure and then we could expand it. So for Project Pipeline, we did, instead of doing it in one borough, we tried to expand it to a lot of different boroughs. And it was just, we had so much support. Like I had so much support on anything that I wanted to do. And then there was just so much knowledge. Like it was incredible. Like, so I just, being in New York with these architects was, I don't know, they're great people. Like we got to know each other's families and we got to just build, basically we're just designing for our community. And that's what it's always been about for me. Wherever I'm planted, I like to join with the people who are creating and who are designing spaces for what we actually need. And then that's what we do. So we went to work. we went to work, so. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, and how am I continuing it? I'm the chair of the.
In spite of COVID, you know.
Sorry.
In spite of COVID.
In spite of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually this overlapped with just a huge personal shift in my life, like becoming a mother and a wife. It's just an identity shift, and combining that with kind of like your former self of going hard and going after things, but now you're going hard for your family. And so that has been an interesting balance. That's been my 2020. Like, what does that look like to do both? So I think it was helpful to talk to a few architects in New York about what their experience is and what works. Basically, it's have a village and just keep going, you know? So working at that, but ARE study group has been going strong, connected with a few different cities, trying to see what they're doing. That's been fun. But yeah, basically just keep going. That's my
Yes, indeed. Keep pushing.
motto for 2020. Yeah.
Wonderful. Taya. One thing you kind of mentioned it on the call today, kind of being operating in a different environment than you were schooled at. So coming from architecture, having that background, but not working in traditional firms. I remember one piece on your application, which was cool. It's almost like you had the opportunity to, I say as architects, we can get caught up in speaking to ourselves a little bit too much. And you didn't really have to go through that. So you could kind of, set the stage, you could kind of position architects to do the work that you determined. One thing you talked about on your application and your essay was having more architects at the front end of projects ultimately strengthen our profession and show the value of our education to the world. And that's really important. I think one thing about Desiree, the work that she was doing at Little, it was a little bit more business influence with some of the projects, a little bit more on the real estate side of things. And that was really interesting. So kind of, not that she wasn't getting them drawings out, we got to, but I think there's, how do you see how would you tie those two things together? I mean, kind of the work that you were doing, and I think still doing now, it is kind of in the light of Desiree, right? It's I don't know if you knew that, but it kind of is. So yeah, how would you talk about the importance of that kind of setting the stage for the work and not just being the ones pumping out drawings 8,000 hours a day? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crucial. So when I was in school, we took our Pro Prac class the last year. And I remember like studying Pro Prac as a 5th year, and it hit me like architects don't define the project. There's nothing about, we don't control any piece, right? By the time the project comes to us, the client already knows what they want to do. They already know what they're going to spend. And we have the option to say yes or no. And most architects aren't in a position to say no. Just financially, most people can't. And then like a really great architect can try to transform it once they're in the job. And a starchitect might be so big that the client just does whatever they say. But rarely is that really the case, right? You're going to have to, and then like there's that whole added aspect that happens once you go to construction, once the GC gets involved. And that's where like people complain a lot about architects, and it's in that space, right? And so it's interesting because I've worked for companies where being an architect was the non-traditional background in whatever space I was in. I was surrounded by lawyers and MPAs, and occasionally there's a planner sprinkled in that everybody thinks is an architect, right? But like for the most part, it's folks that are in the humanities. And coming in and being an architect and everyone wants our skill set on the front end, and there's none of us. Like, you might, every now and then you get a couple on a board. You might have a volunteer architect that's, ear hustling around an organization, a nonprofit or community organization, because they're trying to get the job. And, a very tiny bit when I was working in nonprofits, do you get like some pro bono services. But almost always the pro bono services are from like small to medium size white owned firms where it's like the namesake is still there, and they use that to like advertise to the rest of that demographic of nonprofits. So it also it feels extractionary at times, right? It doesn't always feel like they're doing it. I mean, they do care, but like there's a business transaction there that's like hidden in the wake. And so when I think a lot about like the jobs where I've had to be influential, it's in that front end feasibility, right? That's when you're figuring out how big could this be? What site are we going to pick? Like, most people don't want to spend the money to hire the architect at that stage. And the projects that can afford to do it are very, very big. So you don't get that in the context where, I guess, kind of going back to what Charlita said, right? The projects in our communities, like no one's hiring an architect to figure out, should they buy this lot, get this $1 lot from the city, or get that $1 lot from the city. And so understanding the importance of having us in that room at that point, I think also working at organizations that are used to doing real estate and used to hiring architects, it baffled me how little they understand about our industry in the space of how they vet our proposals, in the space of how they write the RFPs that architects respond to, or even how they try to advertise for their jobs. The number of places I've worked where they're like, oh, we just put all our solicitations on our website like we do for everything else. And I'm like, well, how is that going to get you more MBEs? Are they checking do you even know if they know your website? Like, are you emailing them the link to your website and like, hey, this thing is live? And they're like, no, but you want a different result? Like, that's insanity. Like, actually, it's the definition. So I think having more of us on the front end is a space where, it's not typically valued, right? That's not something we highlight or we elevate in our professional networks. But having a person that can like actually award the jobs, that's like a big thing. Like, the number of people I'm able to like sneak in a room, or like, I control the list. Like, so I can just write, half of Nicoba and Philanoma, and I can write all the names on there, and you're like, well, at least they're going to be in the room, and you're going to have to listen to them. You're going to have to like give them the chance. And, at one point, when I first realized I might not be able to be licensed, I was like, well, at least I got to advocate for the folks in the field, right? Like, I won't feel like I'm living up to my degree if I'm not at least advocating for the importance of what we do. And I think I lucked out because in my city, a lot of people are in that space. A lot of people are working for owners. We have a lot of NOMA members that are like working for Temple, or working for the Housing Authority. They're working for these large organizations, but it's still something where like people that gravitate in that space, it's always still seen as like, it's because you couldn't make it in the other space. And I think like trying to figure out a way that it becomes something that we value. And I think, I think back to like the moment where I was like, I need to figure out through come hell or high water some way to get my license. It was that I met a guy who works for AKRF, which is a large consulting firm. They mostly consult in the environmental and real estate space. And he was the project manager, and they were doing some pro bono work with the first nonprofit I worked for. As a Black guy, he lived in Philly, but worked in the New York City office and commuted every day. So I knew he made a lot of money because that's like an expensive commute. And like, you knew he was expensive. Like, he had expensive suits, he had expensive watches. You knew he walked in the room, he was expensive. And I remember he was like an MBA, he had an architecture degree, and he had gotten his license. And I remember he said he didn't switch. He knew he always wanted to end up in real estate, but he didn't switch until he got his license. And I said, why? And he was like, do you know how nice it is to sit in a room and somebody doesn't know you're an architect? And then they say something, and then you're like, oh, that's not true. And they're like, well, you don't know. And you're like, actually. And he was like, having his license changed the game for him in that space. And he was like, don't think that it's just about stamping people's drawings.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, you're right? Because like no one can touch you. When you're in a meeting, you're like, that's not how that works. And they're like, what do you know? We're just going to ask the architect. And you're like, well, actually.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the license I got over here, you know? It
Or the
changes
zoning code or the building code.
right, you know, you changes your weight in the room. And he was like, as a Black person moving up at a large company, right? He's like, I can't make that up, right? I can't tell you. And like, you know, when I talk to architects and they try to quantify how much more money they made, it was always sad because people be like, I got my license and my firm gave me a hug and featured me on their website, or you know, I got my license, maybe I got $7,000. I'm like, $7,000? That's not even a phone bill a month. What? Like, that's crazy. It costs more than that to take the test. This is insane. But like, you're not getting like a 20 grand raise. And people are like, no, like not at all. For him, it was like 30K difference in salary.
Wow.
When he got his license. And I was like, and I see that, right? The spaces I've been in when there is a
car, not a cheap car, but you know,
it's a nice car. Yeah,
that's a nice car.
It's a nice car.
An adult car.
Back and everything. You might have both speakers. And like, you know, when I see people in even like city government, because I do a lot of work with city government, like the folks that are at the top, we're one of the degrees, like, you know, they'll be like, they want an MBA, they want an MPA, they want a lawyer. And like that, we're like that one degree that like, you didn't need to go and do all the extra stuff and you might still be able to qualify for that position. And I just don't think there's enough people that try to go after them. There's 28 licensed architects. There's 32 licensed architects in Philly. I keep a list there's literally a post-it in front of me. So like, there's 32, right? Black architects in Philly.
That's a good point. Because I work for the Department of City Planning, and I wondered, it's planning. We're designing the city, you know? Mm-hmm. And I wondered how many architects, especially who are in our communities, are here so that we can change the world. You know, this is how we do it. We have to be in these positions. So yeah, it's a really good point you brought up.
Well, it's great work you all are doing. I mean, I think part of this is being involved in looking at the content you all provide every year is just, it's not amazing because I know you put it to work, but it's just looking at it's like, hey, like this is really dynamite. So I really enjoyed every year just looking through the applications and seeing what you say about yourself. I mean, you have to speak your own, people say you have to stand in your own truth. You have to speak your own story. No one else is going to speak it for you. I think every year just seeing all the applicants it's really wonderful. It's great work. And I think seeing how you all reflect Desiree in different ways is wonderful. Seeing how this content reflects different perspectives from architects, from all around, you know, excuse me, I can't even talk. Obviously throughout our region, but different people that we know or don't know. Seeing our family tree grow and grow. And showing that it's significant. One gentleman spoke up, was it a couple years ago, Catherine? And he was saying, hey, you know, who is Desiree? You know, why she deserves
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even drink beer, but hold my beer. You know,
he was mad at our website. He was mad because like the description that we had on the website, he's like, well, who wrote this? This doesn't even sound good. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like totally missing the point, really.
Totally missing the point. And I think part of what I tried to say then, very nicely, why does Desiree deserve a scholarship? I wish that we wouldn't have to do a scholarship for Desiree.
Right.
Of course.
That's the point. I wish that she was here. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do any of this. I'd rather she was still here.
Right.
So I'm not going to let someone come at my friend and say, oh, like, we got to validate who she was. Hey, we're not, that's a non-starter. Right? But
because I feel like this is like, for me, this is like if I have a pet peeve sometimes with our circle, I think you said it a few times, right? You know, she could have been any one of us. And I know that sometimes I fall into the, what they call us, the nomarati, right? And like the folks that everybody sees over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm friends with a lot of the people that folks see their names over and over again. And I'm very close to folks in Philly who aren't in that group. And I get teased all the time, right? I get teased about how like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Like it's all good fun. But I also feel like we're an organization where more often than not, I feel like the women are the ones that don't get pulled up. And I think there's a handful of women that once you like hit a certain level, you get named over and over and over and over times again, you get pulled and you get all these opportunities. And then it's treated like all the other women in NOMA don't exist. And the one time we see them is when we do Vortex, right? You go in Vortex and then the room is filled with like 200 people. And you would have thought for the whole year there was only 10.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah. Everyone knows Nikki, everyone knows Devin, everyone knows Catherine, me, Kim, Tiffany, Pascal. Like we're inundated, right? To the point that like it sucks because we're all still rising in our career and we all still need the notoriety for outside of our circle, right? Mm-hmm. But like there's still a million other people that aren't getting that press. And I think one of the things to me that was always really great about this award is that it gave an opportunity to some of the other folks to be like, no, but they're working too. Like you said, you've got these amazing applications and they're working to put in the work at their firms. And people just don't know who they are. Maybe they don't come to conferences. Maybe they're introvert. Maybe they're quiet. Maybe they're at a firm that's really big and they don't get the opportunity to present every year, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't know Brian Hudson personally, right? And I think it's about making sure we make space for all of those folks because we don't. And then one of the big things I've heard, you know, especially now that I do a lot of the conference planning, is like people saying that we're cliquish. And you can't even fight it. And you're like, I get it. And I was like, the clique is important, right? The clique is my family, right? It's like it's an important thing in my life as a person who like I don't, my mother's dead. I have one little brother. Like this is my family, right? I was in Chicago in the middle of the pandemic. I flew in and like who brought me Lysol wipes? Brian Hudson drove over and brought me Lysol wipes, right? Like that was who my people were. Who made sure I got a ride over to like get what I forgot what we had to get, but it was like some giveaway for masks, right? And I drove to a thing with Jason, right? Where I was like, he was the only person I had even been around as of like August 16th for longer than like within 6 feet of me. The closest person that got into me all year was Jason Pugh. And so like, you know, there's a strength to that family that means something to me, but I understand that like it can't isolate other folks. We got to be able to let other people in. And so, I think
definitely, I think one thing to respond to the gentleman is that we can't expect that everyone is going to have an AIA gold medal, you know, 2 years after they start practicing, right? Or that you have to be a Pritzker Prize winner to facilitate a scholarship and have this whole jury of people of star architects. It's like, well, hold on, like Rome wasn't built in a day. Gensler didn't start as a global firm. It's like we have to take those steps and we have to show the strength of our togetherness, the strength of our circles. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the DVC scholarship represents to me. You know, it shows the strength in our circle to band together during tough times, to highlight greatness in the midst of sorrow. And as straight up as I could put it, that's what it is. But the greatness is that Desiree was doing great work. I got to see it like I saw every day. You know, she's doing great work. You all are doing great work. Even before I knew you, I'd heard of you. Or looking at your application, like that's great work. Like you can't, come on. You know, so I think I also to speak to your point, like, you know, for folk to try and put limits on people before they can reach a certain point, it's like, come on, it's utterly ridiculous to me. There's no limit to a person just because they're just getting started. We are emerging professionals. That's what we are. So
I'll say a couple things to that. So I did add after that comment, I don't think we had like a deep bio of Desiree on there. So I did add a link to her alumni magazine from her high school had done a profile, which for me, like that was like one of the best ways to show who she was. Like this is her family, her hometown where she grew up. So that is on there on the website. And then Ty, as far as like highlighting women, I mean, one of the things we didn't talk about writing the vortex, but I'll just mention, you know, sort of that's like that panel, just for people who are listening to this and don't know, the panel that we do at conferences every year. And we try to bring on a woman who hasn't gotten the notoriety, right? And so it's like this year has really been one of the fun things that Catherine Prigmore did this year was actually like highlight like all the women that we have had on the panel and the fact that they've like gone on and like do these things and start these programs. But they were on the panel sort of as the emerging architect, a lot of them, they were just in the town or the city that we were doing the conference in. And we were like, well, who do we know here? Who can we find that can be on this panel? And so it's been really interesting to see like the growth of that 15-year, started in 2018. So yeah, 12 year, I guess, cycle of doing that. And one of the things that I do to try to like highlight people that maybe aren't getting sort of like getting notoriety maybe in their corners is that I used to, from the Riding the Vortex Facebook page, I used to like do a search like once a week or once a month on just like Black women architecture on Google and just be like, what pops up on the Google for like the last month or whatever like that. Because yeah, people would get these articles in like their local newspaper or some local magazine, and like that would be the only place that they saw it. It wouldn't go out like nationally. So like to be able to like highlight those things and highlight like all the great things that we are doing in our communities or in our work or in our firms or community service or whatever it is that people are getting notoriety for in their small circle, but be able to highlight that and shine a light on it is something that I've tried to do, because I feel like we do need to see more of each other, and we do need to see like the great work that we're all doing out here.
You do a great job, Catherine. I don't know if like you get as much credit for it, but like I know when I think of sources of information, because you know me, I like to talk to people, and I always like I read a lot, and like I always tell people locally, and I'm like when I look back and think about it, like either you or Joel have posted probably like 75% of the like architecture related things that I share. So and it's just the
Thanks.
two of you, like you guys just do it.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of grassroots efforts are what make the most impact, I think, especially like throughout history. A lot of those great movements, the Student Nonviolent Committee, it was grassroots at first. It was women wanting to make a difference, people, even NOMA. So I really appreciate this scholarship because it goes right to the source, It's
Yeah, and that
exactly what
was
we need at this time.
yeah, I was gonna say that's people have criticized us for that and like, oh, why didn't you go to like a larger organization and do the scholarship there? And I think between like Nick and the group of us who
Hey,
founded it, it
why
was like,
not? What?
yeah, it was like we wanted it to be us. It's like for us by us
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
mentality of like we don't want somebody else to be doing this for us. We want us to be doing this because it was our friend, it was someone that we knew, and we want to have that touch. Maybe 10 years or 15 years from now when we're older and grayer and that kind of thing, we've gone on and started rolling this cycle or whatever like that, like maybe we can be like, okay, somebody else can take it over. But I think this is only the 5th anniversary that of Desiree being gone, and I think we still all feel that, and I think we're still too close to it to be like, oh yeah, someone else can do that now, we don't need to have any imprint on it.
Like it's not an initiative. It's not a
It's
I wouldn't say it's not an initiative. It's not something that
better.
we just take lightly. Like it's just something, I got a free Saturday, why not? Or yeah, I'll do something. I've never been involved in something like this that's been this close. I mean, we've all been involved in organizations, whether it's NOMA or other organizations, and we put our time into it. We've argued with our colleagues about it. Oh, it needs to be this way or that way, whatever. But I've never been involved in something this significant. So to act like we can just take it lightly or make decisions that don't really matter or whatever it does matter. It is important, And I think that's, I don't know. I may just be talking, but
No,
What do
you
you
all have
think?
grown so
that's
fast
really,
and so much.
significant.
Yeah, I mean, you all have taken something and like it's grown so fast from where it started. And I mean, I feel like when people or groups start something, outside people always have something to say. It's not the way they would do it. It's not the way they would make it. It's not, why didn't you do, no. I mean, it's the way that you all envisioned it based off of what you knew about Desiree and how you all felt about her and her spirit, and you're sharing her spirit, and a lot more people know more about her because of that, I feel like. So, I mean, I think that's one of my pet peeves that I have with like programming and events and stuff. Somebody always has something to say. Just keep doing what you do, and as long as that mission or that reason behind it is still alive, nothing else matters.
Indeed.
On that note, we'll have us speaking for 4 hours. So
Wait, I have a quick
Limit
question.
it to your podcast.
if you want to edit this, then
3-part series.
Question before we sign up.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about doing like a PSA or some type of video about Desiree? Like it's from the earlier part of the conversation, it seems like the awareness around domestic violence and just making sure you know your circle or you're checking in on your circle is important, an important part of her story or the end of the story. And for me, when I saw the scholarship and I heard about Desiree, I started looking up everything because I wanted to know more about who she was. I could sense that she was a light, but I really wanted to know her story. I wanted to hear from her friends. I wanted to like get that full picture because it was an inspiration. So you guys, possibly you could like make a video about her, or I don't know, do something that's kind of a memorial along with the scholarship so that people, as a purpose of kind of like inspiring people, but also in awareness, possibly, I don't know, just an idea. Just from hearing this conversation, I just have a lot of like, I'm impacted. I have a lot of emotions and like thoughts and wanting to live better, wanting to live more timely, you know, all of this. I think it's incredible. So yeah, if we can impact more people in that way, that's powerful.
Well, I think that this podcast is the first step.
Yeah,
for sure.
Just talking about her and stuff like that always crosses my mind, how to bring us forward and let other people know she's not just a name. I was very close to Barbara, so Barbara's not just a scholarship, you know, like
arbitrary name we plastered on the scholarship.
Exactly. Other stuff has always come across my mind. Maybe she get an FAIA someday, or, you know, like, because they've done that too, more towards Barbara than to Desiree. But yeah, sounds like I'm gonna answer your question with what they usually tell me in any normal. Since you brought it up, it has become your baby. It's all you.
Right.
No, I mean, I think about, like, it's a cautionary tale, and for the people that knew her directly, it was very real, right? Because like you guys have to mourn the loss of your friend.
Mhm.
But to me, it was also just indicative of like every story I'd heard since I was in school about what it's like to be a woman in the field, is that life happens. We don't know whatever the life is, whether it is your mother got sick and you stopped working because you had to take care of her, or you had a kid, and then suddenly you're raising a kid by yourself. But like so many things happen, life happens. And not that life doesn't happen to men, but it tends to seem to set women back in a different way.
Mhm.
And like, you know, I think, you know, for hers is like the scariest, right? The scariest situation is like what happens when you're not here. But like we've got to rally around each other and get it done, right? And I think that's, to me, the urgency of the things you guys picked to award was important, because for many women, like there's two pressure points, right? That's the first one, and the second one is that first promotion once you're in a job. And like those are the moments, right, where you have a kid, or maybe you weren't maybe Charlita hasn't been able to put in as many hours on projects in 2020. And it's absolutely reasonable, right? Like I have Nick's Facebook post every week about how his child, who's the cutest thing on earth, is like completely impacting his work day, right? It's hard. But there's just this like impact on women that like we know it's quantifiable. There's been studies that have shown us how it affects us. And to like be that one boost that you can kind of support them in that space, that's really important, especially because there's so few, very specifically Black women in the field, right? It's can you get past the barrier?
Yeah, and I will clarify that the Black Women in Architecture Award is the only specific for women, and so men can apply. We haven't awarded any men yet, but men can apply for the DC, the Harrisburg, and for the NOMA Award. So the Black Women in Architecture one is sort of like the one specifically for women. We've given women the other awards, but it doesn't say that only women can apply for the other awards. I think people have like insinuated that or inferred that, but we do recognize that being a Black person in architecture as well, there's a big impact there as well.
All right. Also, Catherine, I worked with you on NOMA magazine. You were the editor, or you were over the magazine when I first got started. I was at Hampton still, but
yep.
You guys put in a lot of work on the magazine, so it's full circle, and it's funny because
we're all connected. Like it's amazing how the strings work, even with all six of us on here. It's ridiculous. It's crazy how small we are.
Yep.
Even the ones in school right now, we probably could be like, yeah, I know your uncle's gray and best friend aunt.
I think that happens. That's the beauty of, I think, the social network, right? Noma, Jason, whatever it is. You know, I did a talk at Syracuse, and it was funny because like they asked Renee Kimbrough to coach. We did a talk together, and like on surface, you would have assumed that we'd never met each other, right? Like nothing in our we don't live in the same city. Our resumes don't overlap at all. And you know, they showed up and like the white people didn't know we knew each other. So like I get there and they're like, oh my God, have you guys met each other? And I'm like, man, y'all, she been texting me since she landed. Right? Like, I had to go get her a coffee. I was like, I'm just trying to get up, I'm trying to take a break. No. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, we walked over here together. We ate lunch already together. And they were like, how do you guys know each other? And it's like, just know we know.
Noma.
Right? Like, yeah.
Good.
All right. On that note, guys.
Thank you, Melissa, for the opportunity and the time and the vehicle. We all appreciate your podcast. It's been a great listening to you over the last year and a half.
It's been a year.
A year.
January was the first one. So, and you guys will be the first one in 2021.
Cool.
Um,
Thank you.